we're going to go to our next great speaker. I am super excited to have Andrea with us. She is in the zone in Region 36, the big champion for us on the Rotary Action Plan. And what she's going to talk about tonight is specifically looking at how do we enhance that engagement and increase that impact within the Rotary Action Plan. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Andrea.
Okay, thank you, Gretchen. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and bring up my slides here. Um, Okay, so as Gretchen mentioned, we're going to spend a little time talking about the Rotary Action Plan this evening. And to start off, I want to remind everyone, I know we saw this earlier this evening in a previous presentation, but this is Rotary's vision statement. I don't think that we can go over it too many times. Together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. And I realize that if this is now the second time that you've seen this vision statement, it's a lot to remember. But I would ask you to, rather than memorizing the whole statement, take a look at the four words that are highlighted in turquoise. Together, people create change. And if you remember nothing else from this vision statement tonight, remember those four words because that's really what Rotary is all about, right? We're here as a group to create change in the world in which we live. Before we dive into the action plan itself, I want to spend just a little bit of time um, going over a survey that was done a couple of years ago. It was a survey of growing clubs throughout North America. And there were approximately 350 clubs that were included in this survey, and they were clubs that had shown consistent growth during the 5 year period between 2018 and 2023. These accounted for approximately the top 4 to 5% of the approximately 8,200 clubs that we have in North America, and that's US and Canada. And in order to be included in this survey, these clubs had to have a net growth of at least 10 members in the previous 5 years, and they had to have growth in at least three of those 5 years. So the club, you wouldn't be included if you had all your growth in the first year and then had some losses, but still came up with a net growth of at least 10 members. You had to have growth in at least 60% of those years. There were many, many questions that were included in this survey, and we don't have time to go over all of them. But one of the high points of the survey that I do want to make you aware of is that on average, in general, these clubs reported that they use the principles and the tools and the action plan to grow their membership. And that on a scale of 1 to 5, um, with five being the highest, um, they indicated that it was a fairly important factor in their ability to grow their membership. The survey also identified there were several key characteristics of growing clubs. So these clubs, in general, had an average attraction rate of 25% per year. So, for instance, if your club had 40 members at the beginning of the year, clubs that use the action plan were able to bring in, on average, 10 new members. So 25% of that 40. Some other characteristics of these growing clubs is that they consistently fill their key leadership positions. We just heard Gretchen talk about identifying, or actually, we heard it from the previous speaker about identifying your president-elect 18 months out. That's how we fill our leadership positions is we do it intentionally and we do it far enough in advance that those leaders have an opportunity to prepare for their year in those roles. Also, growing clubs on average made sure that they set their goals in Rotary Club Central. There's 26 goals in Rotary Club Central that you can set for your club for the upcoming year, and they consistently did that. In addition, these growing clubs had a tendency to have more female members. On average, they had approximately 40% of their membership comprised of females, and they tended to have more members under the age of 40. On average, it was about 10%. So the key takeaway that the surveyors came away with was that growing clubs have higher attraction rates, but they also have higher retention rates. So even though they're attracting these members, a lot of times we see other members go out the back door, and we end up with a net increase in membership of zero or even negative by the end of the year. But these clubs had both a higher attraction rate and a higher retention rate because they focused on creating an irresistible club experience. And they did that by using Rotary's action plan. We have learned through various surveys over the past several years that the club experience is the number one most important reason why members stay in Rotary. And so it's very important to make sure that their club experience is one that is enjoyable and that will keep them coming back week after week for our meetings. And so in a nutshell, retention is an outcome of focusing on that club experience. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the action plan and how you can use that within your club to increase the satisfaction of your members and improve their club experience. The Rotary Action Plan consists of 4 priorities: increasing our impact, expanding our reach, enhancing participant engagement, and increasing our ability to adapt. This evening, we're going to focus on 2 of those priorities. We're going to focus on enhancing our participant engagement and also on increasing our impact. So we'll start first with enhancing participant engagement. Rotary International has a set of strategic objectives for each of the 4 priorities of the action plan. And so our organization's strategic objectives with respect to participant engagement are to support our clubs, to better engage our members, to improve understanding and support of individual participants in Rotary, to offer new opportunities for personal and professional connection, and to provide learning opportunities for leadership development and skill building. Now, before we move to the next slide, I hope you all have a piece of paper and a pen that you can jot some notes on. I know earlier we heard where you are going to be provided a copy of these slides, but I'd like for you to spend a couple of minutes as we go through the next slide and just jot down some ideas as they come to mind. We're not going to spend very much time on this, but I'd like you to spend just a couple of minutes for each question that I'm going to propose and jot down some thoughts you have with respect to the way you would answer this question with respect to your club. So first of all, how do you think your club can better support your new members? What can you do to make that experience better for the new members of your club? Secondly, how can your club find out what your members want from their club experience? How can you know what your club members want or what they might be missing in their club experience? What is it that they like about the club experience that keeps them coming back week after week? And how can you find that out? What ideas do you have? Why do you think that it's important to involve your club members in decision making? Does your club involve club members in decision making, or does your club board meet once a month and make the decisions on behalf of the entire club? And why might it be important to include the entire club in that decision making? And then finally, how can you help your club members develop leadership skills? How can you help to prepare them for the roles that they will be taking, not only in the near term, maybe over the next year, but roles within your club that they may be taking over the next several years? And what can you do to help to prepare them for that? So I'm going to offer some suggested responses to some of these questions, but there is no one correct answer. There's many ways to support our members and improve the club experience. I'm going to give you some ideas to get your mind thinking about what other things you may be able to do. And we have tools on the Rotary website that will help you come up with additional ideas. But we can support new members by implementing a new member orientation program. How often do we invite members to come to a club meeting and, after they've been inducted and they know a few people, oh, surely they'll figure it out on their own. But by implementing a new member orientation program, you really can make that experience better for that new member and make sure that they're not feeling lost and taken for granted once they join your club. You can find out what your members are wanting from their club experience by using the member satisfaction survey to learn what's important to those members, what they want out of their club experience, and what they want in order to grow and develop through Rotary. Now, here's something that you really want to take note of is that Rotary International has templates for both of these items on the membership section of the Rotary website. So log into myrotary.org, go to membership, and there is a sample new member orientation program that you can use and to modify to fit your club's needs. And there's also a member satisfaction survey that's available in a Word format, along with instructions on how to turn that into a Google Doc. So you can adapt that member satisfaction survey to meet the specific needs of your club and the situations within your club, and then turn it into a Google Doc and email it out to your members and see what kind of response you get. It's important to involve all of your club members in decision making because it makes them feel valued. It makes them feel informed. They feel like they're needed, that their opinions are wanted when you seek their input in making those decisions. It's fine for the club board to come up with several options and narrow the options down to 2 or 3. But before making a final decision, especially on something really important, such as a new project or a new fundraiser, you can really gain the buy-in of your members by including them in that decision-making process. And then finally, you can help your club members to increase their and improve their leadership skills by using Rotary's Learning Center. Unfortunately, I can't see a show of hands from where I'm sitting, but if you have not been into Rotary's Learning Center, you really should go check it out. The courses that Rotary International offers through the Learning Center are absolutely outstanding. The courses are anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes to complete, so they're very short. They're packed with information, and it's a great way for you to help your incoming club officers, club committee chairmen, to learn more about the role that they're about to take on And there are also leadership courses as well that members can use to help develop their own individual leadership skills. But for every one of your officers or committee chairs, there is an entire learning course comprised of anywhere from 8 to 10 um, learning courses that those officers and committee chairs can take, so that they can feel comfortable that they know what they're supposed to be doing in that new committee role that they just agreed to take on for the next year. But once again, there's much more to be learned by going to the membership section of the Rotary website. There's many more tools available to you and your membership chair, and I strongly encourage you to go out and check them out and see for yourself what they have available. But now we're going to move on to the next priority that we're going to discuss tonight, and that is increasing our impact. With respect to this priority, Rotary International has 3 strategic objectives. They include eradicating polio once and for all and leveraging that legacy by using those learnings on the next big corporate project that Rotary decides to undertake. Focusing our programs and offerings so that they create meaning for our members. And finally, the third is to improve our ability to achieve and measure impact. And we're going to hear a lot more about impact in the next from the next speaker, who is going to be talking about how the Rotary Foundation can help your club to create impact and change the world. So here are your questions to consider for this topic, for this priority. How do we define impact? How does Rotary define impact? How would you define impact? And how do we know whether we're making an impact? Next question. How does your club identify the projects that it's going to undertake? Whether that be a global, international project or a project right there in your own community. How do you determine what your club is going to spend your time and resources on? Why do you think that it's important to measure the impact of your club's projects? What benefits might your club realize by measuring the impact of your projects? And why should you spend the time to do that? And then finally, how can the publicizing of the impact of your projects benefit your club? What kind of benefit might your club get when you talk about the impact that you've created within your community or around the world? So Rotary International defines impact as the positive long-term change resulting from our actions. Does that sound familiar? Sounds a little like our vision statement, doesn't it? But that's how Rotary defines impact. If the change is not long-term and sustainable, then it's not really making an impact. When your club prepares to take on a new service project, and you're trying to decide what that service project should be, your club should conduct a community assessment to determine whether or not there is a need for that project in your community. It might be easy for us sitting on the outside looking at an area, a distressed area of our community, to assume that we know what the solution is to their problems. But unless we ask the people who will be directly impacted by our project, there's no real way to know whether our project will in fact address those needs. And that's why we want to be sure to conduct a community assessment. Once again, there's a document on Rotary's website that will take you through the community assessment project step by step so that you don't have to completely figure it out on your own. And the community assessment should be done both before you select the project and then again after the project has been implemented so that you can see what kind of change has occurred within that segment of the community or that segment of the population that you were hoping to be able to positively impact. Because by looking at the difference, the pre-project and post-project difference in that community assessment, you can measure, that helps to measure the impact that your club has had on the community. It's important to measure impact for 4 reasons, because it promotes accountability and the use of the dollars, accountability for the use of the dollars and the time that you put into that project. It builds knowledge within your club and within the other groups within the community about how to address these types of problems. It increases the sustainability of the project and also will foster recognition of the impact that you've created. And then finally, you can benefit your club when you share impact stories because it can increase your club's profile in your community and it can attract new members. Some of those people you have been working with over the last year or two on that service project may take a look at your club and say, you know what, I want to be a part of that. Once again, there's more than one answer to these questions other than the definition of impact. But this will give you an idea as you think your way through selecting your next community service project. So those are the 2 priorities that I am covering tonight. You can get more information about all of the topics that I've covered this evening at rotary.org/action plan. Type that in and it'll get you directly to the action plan webpage. And that is all I'm going to cover tonight. We'll cover the last 2 priorities tomorrow.
We're going to listen to Andrea again to talk about the other 2 parts regarding the Rotary Action Plan. And that's going to be expanding your reach and ability to adapt. And then she's going to talk a little bit also about the 3-year goal setting. So we're going to get it kicked off for.
Okay, thank you, Gretchen. Okay, yes, as Gretchen mentioned, we did talk about the 2 of the 4 priorities of the action plan during last night's session, and we're going to cover the remaining 2 priorities of the action plan tonight. And so those 2 remaining priorities are expanding our reach and increasing our ability to adapt. So first of all, we'll start off with expanding our reach. As I mentioned last night, Rotary International has a set of strategic objectives for each of the priorities of our action plan. And with respect to expanding our reach, those strategic priorities are to grow and diversify our membership and participation, to create new ways for participants to experience Rotary, to increase club flexibility and appeal, and to build understanding of impact and brand. So as we did last night, I'd like you to grab a piece of paper and a pen, and we're going to go through a series of questions, and I'd like you to just jot down a few notes for each question and give a little thought as to how you might answer each of these questions with respect to your individual club. So the first question we're going to consider is, How do you think that your club can attract new members? What are the things that you might be able to do to make your club more appealing to the other members in your community? Second, how do you think that your club can create new ways for participants to experience Rotary? And when we're talking about participants, you notice I didn't say members. I used the word, intentionally used the word participants. And what we're talking about here are people who are not currently members of your club. How can you involve other members of your community in ways that they can engage with your Rotary Club and experience what it's like to be a member of your Rotary Club? What do you think that you can do to promote your club, its activities, and its projects within your community? And remember, we talked a little bit about when we're talking about projects, we're not just talking about writing a check. We're talking about how are we creating impact with those projects in our community? And how can you promote that to your community? And then finally, why do you think that it's important to use the resources that are available on the Rotary Brand Center? And are you familiar with the Rotary Brand Center? Have you been to the Rotary Brand Center? Okay, so we're going to talk about some answers that you might have come up with. Once again, there are certainly other ways to answer these questions, and these are just some ideas to get you thinking about how you might to expand your club's reach within your community. One way that we can attract members is to get ideas, new ideas, and make changes that maybe you haven't tried before. As I mentioned last night, the membership page on Rotary's website has a vast number of resources and tools that you can use to make assessments, to do club assessments of how your club is currently interacting with the community and whether or not your club's processes are appealing to members within your community. But that webpage will also give you ideas about how you can make your club more attractive to other members of your community at the same time. And as I mentioned last night, it's really a wonderful tool. You can increase participant engagement from those who are not currently members of your club by collaborating with other groups in your community through service projects or social events as a way to engage those new participants. Invite another community organization to partner with your club on a service project and involve the members of that other organization in those projects so that they can see what Rotary's like, what it's like to be around Rotarians. Invite those same people to social events to celebrate the success of your project and show them that Rotarians not only know how to work hard, but they also know how to have fun and interact with one another in a way that's enjoyable. And some of those folks are going to see that and they're going to want to be a part of that as well. It's a great way to recruit new members to your club. You can promote your club by telling compelling stories about how your club is making an impact in your community. We talked a lot about impact last night, but you've got to share that story of that impact story with your community so that people can see what it is that your club is doing to make your community a better place to live. And then finally, use the Rotary Brand Center to make sure that your club's messaging and logos and websites are consistent with Rotary's brand standards. It's really important that throughout the entire Rotary world, we are presenting one unified image of Rotary. You can see on the Zoom background behind me that I'm using the official Rotary logo on my Zoom background. And that logo should be present on all of your outward facing materials. So if you're not using the new Rotary logo, now is the time to go ahead and get that updated. In addition, the Rotary Brand Center has many other resources and templates that you can use, everything from Zoom backgrounds to brochures to business cards, anything that you can possibly imagine. It's full of wonderful tools that you can use, and it makes things so much easier. You can just pull those up and customize them to work for your club. So now moving on, we'll talk a little bit about the fourth and final priority in our action plan, and that is increasing our ability to adapt. Our strategic objectives for this priority are to build a culture of research, innovation, and willingness to take risks, to streamline governance, structure, and processes, and also to foster more diverse perspectives in decision making. So the questions that we want to consider with respect to adapting our club, first of all, how can you generate new ideas for your club? What do you think you can do to come up with new ideas for service projects or new fundraisers, new social events, ways to change your club to make the meetings run more efficiently or make them more enjoyable? How might you generate those ideas? Second, why do you think that it's important to delegate tasks to other members of your club? Third, how frequently do you think that your club should review its bylaws? And then finally, why do you think it's important to set 3-year goals? Not just 1-year goals, but 3-year goals. One way to generate new ideas for your club is to hold brainstorming sessions with your club members to gather innovative ideas to make your club more relevant. We just heard Jim talk about how AI can be used to help your club to be more effective in its brainstorming activities. You use those tools that are available to you to come up with those ideas for ways to make your club more appealing. Now, with respect to delegating tasks, obviously, one reason to delegate tasks is so that you don't have to do it all. You're going to be busy enough as a club president that you should share some of the workload with your fellow club members. You can do this by making sure that you have committee chairs appointed and that your committees are full, that there are members in each of those committees. But the other benefit of delegating those tasks is that by doing so, it can help you to identify leading incoming leaders, people that will be potentially your next president the following year or 5 years down the road. But by giving those tasks to other members of the club, you can see them in action and you can see how they work as leaders. And it will help you to identify which people you really should be grooming to move into leadership positions in your club in the future. You should review your club bylaws, roles, and other processes annually, if at all possible, for ways to make sure that the processes are efficient and effective, and to also make sure that your bylaws truly reflect the processes that your club is actually using. Now, I realize not every club is going to get their bylaws reviewed on an annual basis. But at a bare minimum, you really should review those bylaws every 3 years following the triennial Council on Legislation. So the last Council on Legislation was held in April of 2025, 1 year ago. And through that Council on Legislation, changes were made to the suggested Rotary Club bylaws and to the Rotary Club Standard Constitution. If your club has not reviewed the standard Rotary Club Constitution and the suggested Rotary Club bylaws sometime within the last year, now is the time to do that, to make sure that your bylaws reflect the changes that Rotary International has made to its governing documents, which affect all clubs. And then finally, it's important to set goals, obviously, but it's also important to set 3 year goals, not just for the current year, but for 3 years. And this helps your club to establish a continuity plan, which ensures that there will be consistency and a cohesive effort over the next 3 years to ensure a greater chance for success across that 3 year time span. Now, this is the last of the 4 priorities. And now I'm going to change topics a little bit and dive into 3 year goal setting a little more in depth. So, while I think it should be apparent why goals are important to set, nobody says it better than Yogi Berra. In his immortal words, if you don't know where you are going, you might wind up somewhere else. And that's true for Rotary clubs as well. But if you set goals, you know where you're headed so that you can hopefully, if you meet those goals, you'll wind up exactly where you intended to go. So on the next slide, I've got an example here of how a 3 year goal setting works. So Bill is the incoming president for the 2026 through 2027 Rotary year. Bill is going to work with the president-elect, Pat, and the president nominee, Tom, and they're going to work together and set goals not only for the current Rotary year, 2026 through 2027, but at the same time, they're also going to set goals that build upon those 26 through 27 goals. And they're going to create goals for 27 through 28 and also for the year 28 through 29. Now we know that it's difficult to predict 2 years out what those goals might be and whether we're going to be ready to achieve those goals. So next year when Pat becomes president, she's going to get together with Tom and Jane, the newest person on the president lineup, and they're going to go back and they're going to take a look at those goals that were originally set for the year 2027 through 2028, and they're going to make whatever adjustments are necessary to reflect what was actually achieved in the 26 through 27 year. And they're going to also make some adjustments to the 2028 through 2029 goals, and then they're going to set new goals for 29 through 30. And this goes on and on. So the goals we're talking about setting can be found in Rotary Club Central. And within Rotary Club Central, there are 26 goals that club presidents can set. Those goals are divided into the 4 priorities of the action plan. You don't have to set all of the goals, but find those goals out of that 26, find the ones that have the greatest potential to have a positive impact on your club and that have the greatest potential to motivate your members to work towards those goals. Now, the Rotary International Board has, however, identified 6 priority goals that they have set, that they are requested all clubs to set for the next 3 years. So every club is expected to set these 6 goals. So under enhancing participant engagement, the goal is service participation. And really the question here is how many members of your club will participate in a service project at some point during the Rotary year. Under expanding our reach, we're talking about club membership. So your goal here is how many members do you anticipate or do you want your club to have at the end of your Rotary year? Now that number should include some stretch. If you've currently got 20 members, maybe budget for set a goal of 21 or 22 members. Be realistic in that goal setting. But like I said, include some stretch. Under increasing our impact, set a goal for what total dollar amount of Polio Plus contributions your club members will donate over the course of the year. The same goes for annual fund contributions. What will your total annual fund giving be over the course of the 26 through 27 Rotary year? And then finally, how many new endowment fund benefactors will come from your club? And these are people that will be making a first time donation to the Rotary Endowment Fund. And then finally, with respect to increasing our ability to adapt, the goal is to either create or update your strategic plan at some point during the year. So these are the 6 goals at a minimum that you should definitely set. But Rotary International also offers something we call the Club Excellence Award. And in order for your club to qualify for that Club Excellence Award, you need to set targets for at least 13 of those 26 goals. You then need to achieve at least 13 of those goals. So if you set 20 goals out of the 26, all you have to do is achieve 13 of those 20 goals. That's why it's important to make sure that the goals are reasonable, but at the same time, make sure that they do provide somewhat of a challenge for your club. And then be sure to report your achievements on Rotary Club Central by June 30th of 2027, because that's how the Rotary International will know that your club has in fact qualified for the Club Excellence Award. So don't go to all that effort and then forget to report your achievements by that deadline. So be sure and mark your calendar right now. And with that, I want to once again remind you of the action plan website. Go to rotary.org/action plan, where you will find all kinds of tools and information to help you implement the ideas we've discussed over the last couple of nights. And with that, I conclude my presentation.